I woke with my forehead pressed against a cold cedar work table and the smell of burnt cinnabar ink in my nose. For one awful heartbeat, I thought I was still dying. I could still feel the beast-tide wind tearing through the outer valley. I could still hear the Talisman hall roof breaking above me. I could still taste blood, smoke, and rain. Then I opened my eyes and saw a neat stack of yellow lightning paper, 3 cracked ink stones, and a lacquered inspection box with the silver seal of the Stormward Sect. My hands were younger. No scars across the knuckles, no tremor from 12 years of emergency talisman work, no black lightning burns climbing up my arms from the last array I had ever drawn. I was back. My name was Kael Renn. I was 23 years old, an outer sect talisman assistant with average cultivation, a bad reputation for wasting paper, and exactly 4 spirit stones to my name. And I had returned to the morning Senior Brother Velric framed me for selling defective lightning charms. Which was inconvenient because the first time this happened, I got expelled before noon. By sunset, nobody in the sect would even say my name. 7 days later, the sect tournament began. 10 days after that, the beast tide came through the northern pass and killed half the outer sect because the defensive charm stores were full of perfect-looking lightning talismans that failed under pressure. And 12 years after that, the cultivation world finally discovered that the so-called failed talismans everyone mocked were not failures at all. Their unstable lightning patterns were the foundation of storm array combat. Naturally, the people who had laughed the loudest were very dead by then, so they never got to apologize. Tragic, really. I sat up slowly, breathing through the panic. The talisman hall around me looked exactly as I remembered. Long rows of cedar desks, bronze lamps, racks of drying paper, and disciples in gray-blue robes pretending not to watch each other's mistakes. The morning bell had not rung yet. That meant I had less than 15 minutes before Velric walked in with 3 hall stewards, opened my storage drawer, and discovered 12 defective lightning charms tied with a merchant's red cord. The same charms he had made. The same merchant cord he had planted. The same smiling little performance that had ended my life before it had even properly begun. My fingers tightened around something brittle in my sleeve. I froze. There had not been anything in my sleeve this morning in the first timeline. I pulled it out carefully. It was a burned talisman fragment, black at the edges, gold fibers melted into the paper like veins. I knew it instantly. It was from the final storm array I had used before I died. The one I had built from scraps in the ruined East Watchtower while thunder beasts poured over the valley wall. It should not have existed here. The fragment was smaller than my palm. Half the runes were gone. The rest shimmered when I looked at them, not with normal spiritual light but with something stranger. Emotion. Not words, not instructions, not a divine manual telling me how to become heaven's favorite little disaster. Just temper. The broken lightning rune in the corner pulsed sharp and impatient like a young disciple trying to speak over an elder. The curved grounding stroke beside it felt heavy and sulking. The fractured spark loop at the center trembled with fear. I stared at it for 3 full breaths. Then I laughed once very softly because apparently dying had not given me a legendary sword, a dragon inheritance, or even a useful system window. It had given me a burned scrap of paper with feelings. Wonderful. Across the hall, someone dropped a brush. A familiar voice said, "Kael, are you all right?" I turned. Min Lessa stood 2 desks away with a stone ink bowl held in both hands. She was 19, quiet, narrow-shouldered, and so easy to overlook that most disciples treated her like furniture that happened to grind ink. In the first timeline, she had been the only person who looked sorry when they dragged me out. Years later, I learned she had saved my rejected drafts because she thought the patterns were beautiful. Years after that, she became one of the finest ink resonance masters in the southern provinces. But today, she was still an apprentice with ink on her fingers and fear in her eyes. I swallowed hard. "I'm fine," I said. She did not believe me. Min had a gift for noticing things people tried to hide. It made her extremely inconvenient and, as I later learned, extremely precious. The morning bell rang. Every disciple straightened. The main doors opened. Senior Brother Velric walked in wearing polished storm silk robes, his hair tied with a silver clasp, his expression smooth enough to reflect sunlight. He was 27, already at the 7th level of chi refining, favored by 3 elders, admired by half the hall, and absolutely convinced the world existed to arrange itself beneath his feet. He looked at me. Then he smiled. "Junior Brother Kael," he said, voice carrying across the hall, "I hope you have an explanation." There it was. The line that ruined me. The first time I had stood up too quickly, I had stammered, I had denied everything before anyone had accused me properly, which was apparently suspicious. Then Velric had guided the stewards to my drawer like a concerned senior brother performing a civic duty. This time I stayed seated. I placed the burned fragment inside my inner sleeve. Then I looked him in the eye and said, "For what?" Velric's smile twitched. "Small thing. Beautiful thing." He was expecting panic. Panic is useful to men like Velric, it makes their lies look stable. He turned to the 3 stewards behind him, "Open his storage drawer." The whole hall went silent. A steward with a jade inspection rod stepped forward. Min's fingers tightened around her ink bowl. I saw her glance at my drawer, then at Velric, then back to me. She knew something was wrong. The steward broke my wax seal and pulled the drawer open. Inside lay 12 lightning charms wrapped in red merchant cord. A few disciples gasped with the exact amount of drama young cultivators think makes them look principled. Velric shook his head slowly. "Defective lightning charms from the rejection shelves, bound for sale outside the sect. Junior Brother Kael, I truly hoped the rumors were false." I stood. Not fast, not angry, just stood. "Senior Brother Velric," I said, "before you continue, you may want to remember the tournament ownership rules." He gave a soft laugh. "The tournament is in 7 days. This is a disciplinary matter." "Yes," I said, "that is why you should be careful." He stepped closer. "Careful of what?" I looked at the red cord in the steward's hand. Then I looked at him. "Blood resonance." For half a breath his eyes went still. Then he smiled wider, because arrogant people often mistake warnings for fear. "Bring him to the hall master," Velric said. "Let us see if scrap paper cultivators have learned new excuses." And just like that, my second life began with the same accusation. Only this time, I was not the one walking into a trap. The Stormward sect was famous for 3 things: lightning techniques, dramatic elders, and rules so old that most disciples only remembered them when they wanted someone else punished. The Talisman Hall was worse. Every charm made inside the hall had to pass through 3 records. First, the paper assignment ledger. Second, the ink issue tally. Third, the blood resonance mark pressed into the lower left corner by the disciple who completed the final rune. Perfect talismans went to the sect armory. Failed talismans went to the rejection shelves. Dangerous failed talismans went to the ash pits. And anything used in official competition had to respond to its maker's blood before the proof array. That last rule was supposed to prevent rich disciples from buying superior talismans and pretending they had made them. It was old, boring, and only enforced during tournaments because elders enjoyed public humiliation when it came with procedure. In the first timeline, I never reached the tournament. Velric made sure of that. He had been stealing small pieces of my work for months, not the finished charms. Nobody wanted those. I was known for producing unstable, ugly, embarrassing lightning talismans that sparked at the wrong time, hummed at night, and once made a storage cabinet sneeze blue fire for 6 hours. But Velric had noticed what others missed. My failures had unusual discharge patterns. He did not understand them, not really. He just knew they looked impressive if cleaned up and hidden inside his polished designs. So he stole my drafts, copied the stable-looking sections, and let me take the blame for everything volatile. A neat arrangement. For him. For me, it meant fines, punishment tasks, and being called a scrap paper cultivator so often that some disciples forgot my actual name. I had a pressure point back then too. My younger sister Nara lived in a town 3 valleys east, and every month I sent her 2 spirit stones for medicine. Her lungs had been damaged by winter ash when we were children. The sect stipend was not generous, but it kept her breathing. Expulsion had cut that off. By the time I crawled back to our town in shame, The apothecary had already stopped extending credit. Nara survived the first timeline barely, but she learned to look at food like it was a calculation. That memory sat in my chest like a nail. So when the stewards took me to Hall Master Orson's chamber, I walked calmly. Not because I was fearless. Because fear had already taken 12 years from me, and I was not donating another morning. Hall Master Orson sat behind a blackwood desk shaped like a storm cloud, which was exactly as subtle as Sect furniture usually got. He was old, broad, bald, and had eyebrows like two white caterpillars contemplating violence. Velric stood at his right. The three stewards placed the 12 wrapped charms on the desk. Orson looked at me. Kael Renn, do you deny these charms were found in your drawer? No. Velric's smile turned satisfied. I continued, I deny placing them there, making them, binding them, selling them, or intending to sell them. The hall master grunted, convenient. Very. That earned me a dangerous look. I lowered my head just enough to be respectful, not enough to be crushed. There is a difference. It took me a whole life to learn it. Velric sighed, Junior brother, this would go easier if you confessed. Defective lightning charms can kill farmers, guards, children. The sect cannot tolerate. Then test them, I said. His mouth closed. Hall Master Orson leaned back. Test them how? Blood resonance. Velric gave a gentle laugh. A disciplinary hearing does not require tournament standards. No, I said, but the sect code says suspected illegal talisman sale can be resolved by ownership proof if the accused requests it before judgment. That rule had saved a minor noble disciple in the first timeline 3 years after my expulsion. I remembered it because I had been sleeping under a cart outside a roadside inn when someone read the scandal aloud for entertainment. Funny what the mind keeps. Orson's eyes narrowed, you know sect code. I learned after being fined 6 times. A steward coughed into his sleeve. Velric's voice cooled. Hall Master, the blood marks on defective charms are often distorted. He could have damaged them deliberately. Then the distortion will show, I said, and if the marks are absent, I accept punishment for negligent storage. Velric looked at me. There it was again, that tiny stillness. He did not know whether the charms carried his blood resonance marks. He had probably used an assistant to scrape them, then planted them quickly. In the first timeline, nobody checked because I panicked and Orson was too angry to bother. This time Orson tapped the desk once. A circular proof array lit beneath the 12 charms. Blue-white light rose. The first charm flickered dull red. Not mine. The second flickered red. The third. The fourth. By the time the 6th charm answered, Velric's expression was carved jade. Orson's eyebrows lowered, Senior Brother Velric. Velric bowed smoothly, Hall Master, I supervised several batches this week. My resonance may remain from correction work. That was plausible. Annoyingly plausible. Orson looked at me. This was the point where a younger me would have shouted, accused, begged them to see. Instead, I breathed in and remembered the burned fragment in my sleeve. Lightning had temper. Lies did too. Hall Master, I said, I request temporary probation instead of judgment. Velric blinked. Orson frowned, you are asking not to be cleared. I am asking for 7 days. The room went silent. I looked at the 12 charms. The Sect tournament begins in 7 days. If Senior Brother Velric supervised these charms, then let him use his corrected lightning work publicly. If they are truly his correction marks, there is no issue. If not, the proof array will show more clearly under tournament activation. Velric's eyes sharpened. He understood the danger now. Too late, but still. Orson studied me for a long time, and what will you do during these 7 days? I thought of the beast tide, the broken valley, the future that called my failures revolutionary after everyone who needed them was dead. I will remain in the Talisman Hall, I said, and repair what the sect calls trash. Velric laughed under his breath, ambitious. I smiled faintly. Not really, trash is all anyone leaves for me. Orson rubbed his chin. Probation, 7 days, no armory access, no merchant contact, no unsupervised outgoing charms. You will work from the rejection shelves only. Min Lessa will record your materials. Min, who had been summoned quietly and was standing near the door, almost dropped her ink bowl. Velric's gaze slid toward her. Hall Master, surely a senior disciple should supervise. No, Orson said, you are involved in the dispute. The word involved landed like a slap wearing court robes. Velric bowed. I bowed. And when we left the chamber, Velric leaned close enough that only I could hear. You bought yourself 7 days of humiliation. I looked at him. No, I said, I bought you 7 days to make better choices. He smiled. Scrap paper does not threaten silk. Then he walked away. I watched his polished robes vanish down the corridor and felt the burned fragment pulse once against my sleeve. Impatient. Sharp. Almost amused. For the first time since waking, I believed I might survive. The rejection shelves occupied the back of the Talisman hall, behind a curtain treated with dampening powder and pessimism. There were 9 shelves in total. Shelf 1 held smudged inkwork. Shelf 2 held broken stroke order. Shelf 3 held low-output charms. Shelf 4 held unstable discharge charms. Shelves 5 through 7 held charms that made stewards mutter prayers before touching them. Shelf 8 had a bronze lock. Shelf 9 had no label at all, which is never comforting in a cultivation sect. My probation allowed me access to shelves 1 through 4. Velric probably thought that was funny. To be fair, it was funny, like handing a drowning man a teacup and calling it a boat. Min followed me in with a record board hugged to her chest. You should not have challenged him, she whispered. I didn't challenge him. You told him to make better choices. That was community service. She gave me a look. I had forgotten that look. Quiet people develop excellent looks because no one interrupts them while they practice. I pulled the curtain closed. The air behind it smelled of old paper, scorched silk, metallic ink, and faint ozone. Hundreds of rejected charms lay stacked in clay trays, some twitched, some hummed. One had folded itself into a little triangle and was trying very hard to pretend it was not there. Min set down her board. What are you really doing? I could have lied. In the first timeline, I lied constantly, not maliciously, just small survival lies. I am fine, it does not hurt, I do not need help, I can manage. They did not save me. So I said, I think failed lightning charms are not all failures. Min blinked. Then instead of laughing, she looked at the shelves. Which ones? That was the moment I remembered why future Min Lessa became terrifying. Most people ask, are you sure? Useful people ask, where do we start? I lifted a rejected spark charm from shelf 3. The paper was warped, the cinnabar stroke too thick near the activation point, the grounding tail too short. A standard instructor would call it trash in 2 seconds. The burned fragment in my sleeve warmed. I pulled it out and laid it beside the spark charm. Min leaned closer. What is that? A reminder. The fragment's dead runes shimmered. The flawed spark charm pulsed faintly in response. Not words. Temper. The activation stroke felt eager but scattered, like a child running downstairs. The grounding tail felt resentful, overburdened. The central spark knot felt trapped. I could not explain that to Min without sounding like a man who had inhaled too much ink smoke. So I said, the spark wants to move, but the grounding stroke is forcing it to stay. Min's eyes narrowed. Runes do not want. No, but lightning does. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she opened her record board and wrote something down. What did you write? I asked. Kael Renn possibly concussed. Fair. I took a fine brush, mixed 3 drops of conductive silver with 1 drop of burnt pine resin, and added a tiny bridge between the grounding tail and the outer discharge hook. In the future, Stormarray combat manuals called this a sympathy vent. In my time, it was called ruining sect property. The charm sparked. Min flinched. I did not. The spark jumped from one side of the paper to the other, circled the central knot, and settled into a steady blue flicker. 1 rejected spark charm. Repaired. Not perfect, not stable enough for sale, not safe enough for a farmer's gate ward. But alive. Min slowly lowered her brush. That was not the standard correction method. The standard correction method is why it failed. That is a very dangerous sentence. Most useful sentences are. She looked at the charm like it might whisper secrets. Can it activate? I placed it on a stone tile, pressed 2 fingers to the blood mark and fed in a thread of chi. The charm snapped open. A blue spark leapt 3 feet across the floor, struck an iron nail in the wall and vanished with a clean crack. Small. Precise. Controllable. My first milestone. In the first timeline, I had made hundreds of these and thrown them away because everyone told me sparks that curved were defective. 12 years later, Stormarray masters paid fortunes for charms that could bend discharge without external formations. Min's face changed. Not excitement exactly, recognition. You knew it would do that. I hoped. That is not the same thing. No, I said, but hope with a brush is better than despair with clean hands. She did not smile, but her shoulders eased. We worked until noon. I sorted rejected charms into 7 groups, not by official defect type but by temper: eager, sluggish, resentful, hollow, overfed, brittle, and screaming. Min did not like that last category. Neither did I. The burned fragment helped me read them, but only vaguely. It showed emotional pressure, not solutions. It told me a rune was angry but not how to calm it. It told me a spark was afraid but not where to guide it. I still had to test, adjust, fail, and occasionally slap a smoking charm under a damp cloth before it embarrassed us both. By the afternoon bell, I had repaired 1 spark charm fully, stabilized 3 partially, and burned 6 beyond recognition. Min recorded all of it. Every charm number. Every defect. Every correction. Every resonance mark. When I asked why she was being so thorough, she looked at me as if I had insulted the concept of paper. Because people steal work that is not documented. The words landed quietly. I met her eyes. How many of my drafts did you save? She went still. Outside the curtain, disciples laughed at something Velric said. Min's voice dropped. Enough. How many? She hesitated. 47. My throat tightened. In the first timeline, I had thought I left nothing behind. Apparently, I had left 47 pieces of myself in the hands of the only person quiet enough to protect them. Why? I asked. She looked down at her ink-stained fingers. Because they looked like storms trying not to die. For a moment, I had no clever answer. Then the curtain snapped open. Velric stood there with 2 inner disciples behind him. His gaze moved from the repaired spark charm to Min's record board to me. Well, he said softly, the scrap paper cultivator found a secretary. Min's face paled. My hand rested near the spark charm. Not touching it. Not yet. Velric stepped inside like he owned the air. Careful, junior brother, probation means you are being watched. I know, I said, that is why we are keeping records. His smile thinned. Records can be misunderstood. So can blood marks. The 2 inner disciples shifted. Velric's eyes cooled, but his voice stayed pleasant. You have 7 days, Kael, spend them wisely. I looked at the shelves behind him. I plan to. He turned to leave. Then paused. Oh, and the training beast trial is tomorrow morning. Probationary disciples are still required to attend. Try not to hide behind your little sparks. He left laughing. Min exhaled slowly. I looked at the repaired charm, then at the trays of broken ones. The training beast trial. I had forgotten. In the first timeline, Velric used that trial to make me look physically useless before the final accusation stuck. He ordered me to restrain a horned ashcat with a standard binding charm. The charm failed. The beast knocked me through a fence. Everyone laughed. Tomorrow he would do it again. Only this time I had no standard binding charm. I had trash. I picked up 9 more rejected spark charms and felt the burned fragment pulse against my wrist. Eager. Impatient. Hungry. Min watched me. You have that look. What look? The one people get before doing something elders make rules about afterward. I began sorting charms. Good, I said, then we are early. By midnight, my eyes felt full of sand and my meridians buzzed like angry bees. Cultivation stories love to talk about breakthroughs as if they are glorious pillars of light and dramatic hair movement. In Talisman work, Growth is mostly hand cramps, ink stains, and realizing you have made the same mistake 17 times because you were too proud to measure properly. I had 10 broken charms laid in a circle on the floor. Not repaired. That would have been too simple. Each charm remained flawed, but the flaws were arranged to answer each other. One eager spark needed room to run. One sluggish spark needed pressure behind it. One resentful grounding stroke wanted to dump excess chi into anything nearby. One brittle discharge hook cracked if fed directly, but worked beautifully if shocked sideways. In the future, this was the first principle of Stormarray combat: do not force unstable talismans to become stable. Let their instability circulate. Back then nobody knew that. Or maybe some forgotten master had known, written it down, and been ignored by 11 generations of disciples who preferred straight lines and expensive paper. I sat cross-legged with the burned fragment in front of me. Its runes flickered faintly. The fragment did not show me answers, it showed me moods. 10 broken charms around me felt like 10 quarrelsome strangers trapped in a small room. My job was not to make them friends. My job was to make them argue in rhythm. Min sat near the curtain grinding ink with slow, even circles. She should have gone back to the apprentice dormitory hours ago. She did not. Your breathing is uneven, she said. My breathing is offended. Your chi pulse is worse. Also offended. She set down the ink stone. You cannot control 10 charms if one repaired charm drained you. I am not controlling 10. That is not reassuring. I'm introducing them. She stared at me. I pointed to the circle. That one releases first, that one catches the overflow, that one pulls the discharge sideways, that one grounds the rebound, the others only wake if the pattern holds. And if it does not hold, then you should stand behind the stone cabinet. Min moved behind the stone cabinet without another word. Smart woman. I fed chi into the first charm. It snapped blue. The second charm flared too early. The third sulked. The fourth screamed. The circle spat lightning into the ceiling, cracked a roof tile, and dumped soot into my hair. Min slowly leaned out from behind the cabinet. I coughed smoke. That was informative. That was attempted architecture murder. We learned the second charm is impatient. We learned you are flammable. Both useful data points, frankly. I adjusted the second charm with a thinner silver bridge and added a grounding notch to the fifth. Then I tried again. Failure. Again. Failure with less smoke. Again. Failure with a very rude noise from charm 7. Again. At the 17th attempt, the 10 sparks leapt in sequence. Blue-white light circled the floor, not smoothly but fast enough that the eye saw a ring. The air lifted the loose hairs around my face. My chi dipped, caught, and steadied. The burned fragment pulsed warm. Not approval. More like recognition. I let the circle run for 5 breaths before cutting the feed. The charms fell silent. Min stepped out slowly. That, she whispered, was not a binding charm. No. What was it? I looked at the 10 flawed papers. A conversation. The next morning, the training yard was full. Outer disciples gathered along the fence, inner disciples watched from the shaded platform, and Velric stood beside a beast cage with the expression of a man who had prepared entertainment. The horned ashcat inside the cage was not large, about the size of a hunting dog, lean, gray, and extremely annoyed. Its 2 curved horns sparked when it scraped them against the bars. A steward read the trial rules. Each disciple had to stop the beast from crossing a chalk circle. No lethal force. No elder assistance, standard tools only. Velric looked directly at me when the steward said that. Junior Brother Kael, he called, since you have been so eager to repair defective work, perhaps you should demonstrate first. The crowd murmured. I walked into the circle with 10 broken charms tucked inside my sleeve. The steward frowned. Those are not standard binding charms. No, I said, they are rejected spark charms from Shelf 3. My probation permits their use for supervised testing. Velric's smile sharpened. A spark charm will only irritate it. I know. The steward looked uncertain, but Velric waved a hand. Let him proceed. A disciple should learn from practical consequences. I almost thanked him for the theme. The cage opened. The Ashket shot forward like a gray arrow. In the first timeline, I had panicked, activated one weak binding charm and been thrown across the yard. This time I dropped all 10 charms. They struck the ground in a rough half-circle. The Ashket crossed the first line. I fed chi into the eager charm. Blue light snapped awake. The Ashcat veered instinctively away from the spark right into the second charm's discharge, not struck, guided. The third charm hissed at its left flank. The fourth cracked near its horns. The beast twisted, claws digging into the dirt, but every path forward became uncomfortable half a breath before it chose it. Gasps rose from the fence. I did not touch the beast. I did not bind it. I did not overpower it. I let 10 broken charms teach it that every wrong direction had weather. Within 12 breaths, the Ashcat crouched in the center of the chalk circle, hissing at sparks that never quite hit. The steward raised his hand, trial complete. Silence. Then someone whispered with rejected charms. Velric's face was calm. Too calm. But his jaw had tightened. Milestone 2. 10 broken charms, 1 training beast stopped without contact. I collected the papers before anyone could inspect them too closely. 3 were scorched beyond reuse, 2 had cracked resonance corners, 5 could be repaired again. Efficient, no. Revolutionary, eventually. Min stood beyond the fence, record board clutched to her chest. For the first time since I returned, she smiled. Barely. But I saw it. Velric did too. After the trial, he intercepted me near the water jars. That was a cheap trick, he said. Very cheap, they were rejected. You think making a cat hesitate means you are a combat talisman master? No. Good. I think it means I was right to ask for 7 days. His eyes went cold. You are still on probation. 1 mistake and Orson will throw you out himself. Then I should avoid mistakes. Velric leaned closer. You have no idea what you are touching. That almost made me laugh. Because in 12 years, I would watch Stormray combat masters rewrite battlefield doctrine with the exact principles Velric was dismissing. I knew precisely what I was touching. The problem was surviving long enough to make everyone else know it too. That afternoon, Min unlocked a drawer beneath her apprentice desk and showed me 47 saved drafts wrapped in plain cloth. My old failures. My future foundation. Some had coffee stains, some had correction marks, some had angry notes from instructors. One had a scorch mark shaped like a rabbit, which I vaguely remembered causing an argument in week 3 of my apprenticeship. I touched the top draft and the burned fragment shivered. The room seemed to hum. These are not safe, Min said. No, I agreed. Are you going to use them anyway? Yes. She sighed, I thought so. I looked at her, you can still step away. Her expression became very still. Kael, she said, I saved 47 pieces of evidence from a disciple everyone mocked because I thought someday someone might ask why his failures looked copied in Velric's successes. I stepped into this long before you woke up strange. Something in my chest softened and hurt at the same time. Thank you, I said. She looked away quickly. Do not make it sentimental, your line work is still ugly. Cruel but fair. We worked until the lamps burned low. Day 2 ended with 10 broken charms. Day 3 began with 47 drafts and a question that would decide everything. How do you wear a storm without letting it eat you? A storm mantle sounds impressive when future bards say it. They make it seem like a cloak of lightning descends from heaven because the hero's soul is just that shiny. The first version smelled like burnt sleeves. I built it from 21 flawed charms, 3 copper thread anchor loops and a training robe I did not particularly like. Each charm carried 1 unstable spark pattern. The copper loops guided excess discharge away from my meridians and into the robe's hem. The principle was simple. My body would not control the lightning. My movement would. If I stepped left, the charms along my right side released tension. If I turned my wrist, the sleeve sparks shifted. If I lowered my center of gravity, the grounding tails opened. A normal talisman master activated charms 1 at a time. A storm talisman combat master made the entire array respond to posture, breath, and intent. In the future, children learned beginner storm steps with safe practice paper. I had rejected charms, cheap copper, and Min standing nearby with a bucket of sand. Progress is rarely elegant. On day 3, I managed 3 steps before the mantle shocked my shoulder numb. On day 4, I managed 9 steps and accidentally magnetized every brush on the western desk. On day 5, I crossed the entire rejection room without burning myself, which felt like a profound spiritual achievement until Min pointed out that my left eyebrow was smoking. Velric did not leave us alone. Of course he did not. He sent stewards to inspect our material counts. He arranged surprise safety reviews. He convinced 2 inner disciples to stand outside the rejection curtain and laugh whenever they heard a spark crack. One of them called out, "Careful, scrap paper, lightning is for real cultivators." I almost opened the curtain. Min did not even look up from her records. Do not. I was only going to say something educational. No, you were not. Again, inconvenient woman. Velric's real mistake came on the evening of day 5. Hallmaster Orson ordered all tournament entrants to submit their declared talisman categories. Combat disciples registered sword arts, spear forms, beast contracts, shield arrays, and elemental charms. Talisman Hall disciples had to declare which charms they intended to demonstrate so the proof array could be calibrated. I was still on probation, but probation did not bar me from entering. It only made everyone think I would not dare. Velric declared advanced thunder chain talismans. 6 of them. A prestigious category. Expensive paper, refined ink, perfect stroke symmetry, and enough visual drama to impress elders who liked their lightning obedient. The registration board was public. I saw his name in gold ink. I also saw the category notes. Original variations submitted by Senior Brother Velric Oron. Original. I laughed softly in the registration hall. Min beside me followed my gaze and went pale. Those are yours. Parts of mine. He is going to use your patterns. He already is. We have to tell Hall Master Orson. With what proof? She clutched her record board, the drafts. Drafts show I worked on similar failures. They do not prove he stole tournament talismans. Blood resonance will. Yes. My calm made her angrier than panic would have. Kael, he is taking your work in front of everyone. I know. And you are letting him. I looked at Velric's name. Then at the proof array calibration seal beneath it. Yes. Min's eyes widened. That is malicious. That is compliance. It is both. Good. Here was the hidden leverage. Tournament rules did not just prove ownership by the final maker's blood mark. That was the part everyone knew. The part everyone forgot was older. If a talisman contained layered resonance from multiple creators, the proof array displayed the sequence of contribution. Not because elders cared about fairness, but because early sect tournaments had been plagued by rich disciples hearing masters to secretly finish their charms. The array could expose layered work down to major rune structures. Velric believed scraping my final blood marks was enough. He did not know unstable lightning patterns retained emotional resonance from the first successful correction. And thanks to the burned fragment, I could now recognize my own lightning temper. Every flawed pattern I repaired carried a signature like breath on glass. Velric had built his original variation from stolen drafts, but he had done it arrogantly. He copied the parts that looked powerful and ignored the ugly stabilizers. His charms would perform beautifully for 3 breaths. Then the proof array would ask who taught the lightning to move that way. And the lightning, being a spiteful little thing at heart, would answer honestly. I registered my category last. The clerk looked at my form and frowned. Rejected spark charm field. That is correct. Not approved combat category. Then write experimental support demonstration. This is a tournament, not a waste audit. I am on probation, waste audit feels appropriate. The clerk rolled his eyes but stamped the form. Velric approached just as the stamp dried. He glanced at my declaration and laughed, not loudly, worse, privately like I was a joke he owned. Rejected spark charm field, he read. You do understand the tournament has spectators. Yes. Elders from 3 allied sects. Yes. Potential sponsors.
Yes.
And you intend to dance with broken paper. I intend to demonstrate my work. His gaze sharpened. Your work.
I held his eyes. Yes.
Min went very still beside me. Velric leaned closer. You should be careful with that phrase. I spoke quietly enough that only he and Min could hear. You may want to check every blood resonance layer before using those thunder chains. For the first time, his mask slipped enough for me to see anger. Real anger. Not because he was afraid yet. Because I had implied he needed to check his own theft. Then he smiled again. After the tournament, nobody will remember your name except as a warning. That happened once, I said before I could stop myself. His brow flickered. What? I breathed in. Careful. Regression gives knowledge, it also gives wounds that speak at inconvenient times. I continued, warnings change depending on who survives them. Velric stared at me as if deciding whether I was mad. Then he walked away. Min whispered what happened once. I looked at the registration board. In 7 days, the tournament. In 10, the beast tied. If I exposed Velric but failed to prepare the sect, half the outer valley would still die. Revenge was not enough. Revenge had never been enough. I lost, I said. Min did not ask more. Instead, she placed my stamped form carefully into her records. That night we built the second mantle. 36 charms. Copper anchors at wrists, shoulders, knees, and spine. A breathing sequence borrowed from a future beginner manual I had once copied while hiding from rain in a ruined library. 4 counts in. 2 counts hold. 6 counts out. Let the lightning argue outside the skin. By dawn of day 6, I could move across the training yard in a flickering blue haze while every spark curved around me like restless fireflies. I was not strong in the way Velric was strong. He had higher cultivation, cleaner technique, better robes, and elders who liked saying his name. I had 36 failed charms that no longer wanted to die alone. When the 2 inner disciples blocked my path after breakfast, I finally got my public proof. The taller one folded his arms. Senior Brother Velric says probation rats should not use the East practice ground.
Did he?
The shorter one smirked. He said you can practice behind the ash pits with the other trash. I looked past them at the open yard. 10 disciples had stopped to watch. Good. I need the measured stones. You need permission. I have it from Hall Master Orson. Then go complain to him. The tall one reached for my shoulder. I stepped back. The storm mantle woke. 36 sparks snapped into orbit around my robe, not attacking, not touching, just moving. The tall disciple's hand froze 3 inches from my sleeve. Careful, I said, they are emotionally unstable. Someone behind him snorted. He flushed and drove his palm forward with a burst of chi. I turned my wrist. The sparks shifted. His palm met a blue-white curve that redirected his force sideways into the ground. Dust jumped. His arm went numb from fingers to elbow. The shorter disciple cursed and drew a practice blade. I took 1 step. The mantle flared around my shoulders, then down my left side, then across the ground in a crescent. His blade flew out of his hand and stuck in a wooden post. No blood. No injury worse than pride. But the yard went silent. The tall disciple stared at his trembling hand. I walked between them. Tell Senior Brother Velric, I said, that scrap paper stacks. Milestone 3. Storm Mantle. Inner disciples overpowered. Velric heard within the hour. By sunset, every disciple in the Talisman hall had heard too. And by midnight, someone broke into the rejection room. The thief came through the side window because people who think support disciples are weak also think their locks are decorative. I was sleeping under the central work table with the storm mantle folded under my head. Not comfortable, but after 1 death and 1 framing, I had developed a healthy mistrust of dormitory privacy. The window latch clicked. A shadow slipped inside. I opened 1 eye. Min, sleeping behind the stone cabinet with her record board hugged like a shield, did not move. The thief crossed to the draft drawer. I let him open it. I let him lift the top cloth bundle. I let him exhale in relief. Then I activated 1 repaired spark charm under the window. Blue light cracked. He yelped and dropped the drafts. I sat up. Good evening. The thief was one of Velric's errand disciples. Bran, I thought, 5th level chi refining, good family, weak chin, terrible survival instincts. He backed away. I was ordered to inspect. At midnight.
For safety.
Through a window. He swallowed. Min stood, inkstone in one hand. I had never considered an inkstone a weapon before, but in her grip it looked persuasive. I picked up the fallen drafts and checked the cord seals. Unbroken.
Good.
Bran tried to regain dignity, which is always painful to watch in someone caught halfway through burglary. You cannot prove anything. I pointed to the floor. He looked down. When he stepped through the window, he had crossed a thin line of damp cinnabar ink Min had painted earlier as part of our paranoid little precautions, as she called them. His footprints now glowed faint red across the floor. Min lifted her record board. I can.
Bran's face drained.
I almost admired Velric's consistency. He could have backed away, prepared his own defense, or at least stopped committing new violations while under suspicion. Instead, he sent someone to steal the evidence. Arrogant men do not fear rules until rules learn their address. I did not take Bran to Hall Master Orson immediately. That would have started the storm too early. Instead, I gave him a choice. You can leave through the door, I said, and tell Senior Brother Velric you found nothing useful. Or I can wake the Night Steward and ask why your footprints are glowing beside my sealed drafts. Bran stared at me. You are letting me go. No, I am letting you deliver a message.
What message?
I smiled. Tell him the tournament is tomorrow. Bran climbed out the window faster than dignity allowed. Min watched him vanish into the dark. That was risky.
Yes.
He will warn Velric.
Yes.
You want him warned.
Yes.
She studied me because if Velric backs out, he looks afraid. If he competes, the proof array exposes him.
Exactly.
And if he tries something else? I looked at the storm mantle. Then he has one night to become wiser than he has been in 27 years. Min sat slowly. That is not a generous estimate. No. We did not sleep after that. By sunrise, the sect was already waking into tournament fever. The Stormward sect held its outer and inner disciple tournament every 2 years. Officially, it was a celebration of progress and martial discipline. Unofficially, it was a market for reputation. Elders watched for personal disciples. Merchant clans watched for investment opportunities. Allied sects watched for weaknesses. Disciples watched for drama because cultivation does not remove the human need to enjoy someone else's public embarrassment. The arena sat beneath Stormbell Cliff, a wide circular platform of black stone carved with proof arrays, safety barriers, and ranking seals. Around it rose 7 tiers of seats. The elders sat highest under blue banners. Inner disciples filled the middle tiers. Outer disciples crowded the lower benches, whispering behind sleeves. At the center of the arena stood the tournament-proof pillar. 9 feet tall.
White jade.
Veined with silver. Every talisman used in competition had to be touched to it before activation. If the ownership resonance matched the declared maker, the pillar glowed blue. If not, it glowed red and displayed the layered resonance record for the judges. In the first timeline, I had never seen it from the arena floor. I had watched from outside the sect gate with my expulsion token still warm in my hand. This time, I walked through the competitor entrance wearing a plain gray robe threaded with copper loops. 36 charms formed the visible mantle. 264 more were hidden in folded packets around my belt, sleeves, collar, boots, and the inner lining Min had stitched during the night with fingers steadier than mine. 300 talisman sparks. Not all active. Not all safe. Definitely not approved by any reasonable committee. But everyone had been sorted, tempered, paired, vented, and marked. A living storm field still sleeping. Min walked beside me carrying the record chest with 47 drafts, 7 correction ledgers, 3 material tallies, and 1 sealed footprint cloth from Bran's little midnight adventure. You look pale, she said. I died here in spirit once. That explains the complexion. I glanced at her. Her mouth was perfectly serious, but her eyes were not. I laughed quietly. Was that a joke? No. It was.
Focus. Yes, Ink Master. Her ears turned pink. Very satisfying.
Velric arrived to applause.
Of course he did.
His storm silk robes shone silver blue under the morning light. 6 thunder chain talismans floated in lacquered cases behind him, each one perfect at a glance. Clean strokes, refined paper, balanced anchors, beautiful lies.
He looked like the future.
I looked like a man who had lost an argument with a recycling bin.
The judges called the first rounds.
Sword disciples clashed. Spear disciples shattered practice stones. Beast tamers guided flame hawks through rings. Talisman disciples demonstrated barrier charms, burst seals, wind steps, and defensive screens. Velric's category came before mine.
Naturally.
He stepped onto the arena floor to approving murmurs. The lead judge, Elder Cern, raised her hand. Senior Brother Velric Oron, Advanced Thunder Chain Talismans, Original Variation declared, present your work to the proof pillar. Velric bowed gracefully. Then he looked into the lower benches until he found me.
He smiled.
It was a mistake but a stylish one. He placed the first Thunder Chain Talisman against the pillar. Blue light rose. The crowd murmured approval.
The second talisman.
Blue.
The third.
Blue. Velric's smile deepened. Min's fingers tightened around the record chest.
I kept breathing.
4 counts in.
2 counts hold. 6 counts out.
The fourth talisman touched the pillar. Blue light rose.
Then flickered.
A thin thread of red appeared inside it.
Velric's hand stiffened.
The judges leaned forward.
The fifth talisman touched.
Blue.
Red.
Gold. The proof pillar hummed. Not loudly. Just enough for every conversation in the arena to die. Velric withdrew his hand too quickly. Elder Cern's voice cut across the platform, do not move.
Velric froze.
The sixth talisman floated in its case untouched. The pillar's silver veins brightened. Layered resonance unfolded above it like translucent smoke. First, Velric's final blood mark polished and bright. Second, Velric's correction strokes sharp and controlled. Third, a deeper pattern.
Crooked.
Unstable. Eager at the edges, resentful in the grounding, curved where proper thunder chains should have been straight. My lightning temper. The proof array projected a name in silent spiritual script above the pillar. Kael Renn. The arena inhaled. Velric's face went white. Milestone 4 had not begun with 300 sparks. It began with one stolen storm answering honestly. I will give Velric this, he recovered faster than most thieves. He bowed to the judges, face pale but voice steady. Elder Cern, Junior Brother Kael assisted in preliminary instability studies. His resonance may appear because I generously corrected his failed patterns and incorporated one minor concept into my original work.
Generously.
There are lies so bold they almost deserve architectural support. A few disciples nodded, because status has gravity. Elder Cern looked toward the competitor benches. Kael Renn stepped forward. I walked onto the arena floor. Every eye followed me, some curious, some amused, some hostile, some already recalculating where to stand when this ended. Velric turned toward me with a warning in his smile. Junior brother, he said warmly, this misunderstanding does not need to damage either of us. Tell the judges about my guidance. There it was. The offer hidden inside the threat. Help me lie, and maybe I will stop crushing you. In the first timeline, I would have wanted that offer, not because I liked him, because desperation makes scraps look like meals. This time I looked at the proof pillar. Then at the elders. Then at Min, standing at the arena edge with the record chest held firmly in both hands. I said, Senior Brother Velric gave me guidance exactly once. Velric's eyes narrowed. He told me scrap paper does not threaten silk. A ripple passed through the crowd. Elder Cern's mouth twitched, relevant.
Very.
I raised my hand and drew one rejected spark charm from my sleeve. The lower benches whispered. I placed it against the proof pillar. Blue light rose immediately. No red. No confusion. My blood mark, my correction resonance, my flawed spark temper now vented and balanced.
I drew the second.
Blue.
The third.
Blue. One by one, I placed 10 broken charms against the pillar. Everyone answered cleanly. Then Min stepped forward and placed the record chest on the judge's table. Hall Master Orson stood from the elder tier, eyebrows looking ready for war. What is that? Records, Min said softly. Her voice did not carry well in open air, but the arena was so quiet that everyone heard her. 47 drafts saved from Kael Renn's rejected work over 6 months. 7 days of correction ledgers, material tallies, resonance comparisons, and footprints from an attempted theft last night by a disciple assigned to Senior Brother Velric. Bran made a strangled sound somewhere in the benches. Velric turned on him with murder in his eyes, then remembered the judges could see his face. Elder Cern gestured. The record chest opened. Pages rose in the proof array's light. Draft after draft. Crooked curves. Ugly stabilizers. Rejected discharge loops. The same deeper patterns hidden inside Velric's thunder chains. Not similar. Sequential. His original variation was a palace built on stolen scrap. Velric stopped smiling. Finally. But public exposure was only half the climax. A thief losing credit is satisfying. A thief being outperformed by what he stole is art. Elder Cern looked at me. Kael Renn, your registered category is experimental support demonstration. Do you intend to proceed?
Yes.
Velric snapped. This is absurd. He is under probation for defective charm trafficking. Hall Master Orson's voice boomed from above. A probation that was granted because the charms in his drawer answered to your blood. The arena erupted. Velric went still. I had not known Orson would say it publicly. Apparently the old man enjoyed timing. Elder Cern struck the judge's bell once. Silence fell in layers.
Proceed, she said.
I walked to the center of the arena. The safety barrier rose. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. 300 sparks. In the future, I had commanded more, but with better paper, trained meridians, and a body hardened by 12 years of surviving things that had absolutely not improved my personality. This body was 23.
Average. Tired.
Held together by stubbornness and Min's terrible tea. The burned fragment rested against my chest. It pulsed once. Not calm. Never calm. Lightning does not do calm. But it knew me. I fed chi into the first ring of 36 mantle charms. Blue sparks woke around my robe.
Gasps.
I fed the second ring, 72 charms folded along my belt and sleeves. The sparks multiplied, orbiting faster, forming thin arcs that answered my breath. The third ring, 120 hidden sparks. The air above the arena darkened. Not with clouds but with charge. Hair lifted across the lower benches, the safety barrier shimmered. Elder Cern stood slowly. Velric stared at me like he was seeing an insect unfold wings. I fed the final ring. 300 talisman sparks opened at once. For one terrifying heartbeat, the storm tried to become chaos. Eager sparks raced ahead, resentful grounding tails pulled downward, brittle discharge hooks shivered near collapse, charms strained against their anchors. The burned fragment flared hot against my chest. Temper. Not control. I stepped left. Turned my wrist. Lowered my breath. 4 counts in. 2 counts hold. 6 counts out. The storm moved with me. 300 sparks formed a living field around my body, not a shield, not a weapon, not a normal array fixed to stone or paper. A storm that walked. I raised one hand. The sparks curved upward into a spiral. I lowered 2 fingers. They split into 12 streams and struck 12 iron practice posts around the arena at the exact same instant. No explosion. No waste. Each post rang once. I turned. The storm folded into a mantle, then a ring, then a crescent blade of light that stopped 1 inch from Velric's abandoned thunder chain cases without touching them. Every charm in those cases went dead. Not destroyed. Silenced. Dominated. Velric stumbled back. I let the sparks hover. 300 tiny blue-white witnesses. Then I looked at the judges. Failed lightning charms are not useless, I said. They are unstable. Stability is not the only path. Sometimes power is not found by forcing every spark into obedience. Sometimes it is found by learning why it rebelled. Nobody spoke. So I added, because I am still me. Also, please stop throwing away shelf 3. It is embarrassing. A sound broke from the lower benches. One laugh. Then another. Then applause. Not polite. Not immediate. But growing. Outer disciples first, the ones who knew what it felt like to be called defective by people born near better resources. Then talisman apprentices. Then even a few inner disciples who had watched their friends get outmaneuvered by my trash. Elder Saren raised her hand and the applause faded. Her gaze went to Velric. Senior Brother Velric Oron, she said, each word clear as a blade. You submitted stolen layered work as original, used another disciple's resonance structures without declaration, attempted to conceal contribution sequence, and stand connected to a disciplinary framing now contradicted by proof array evidence. Velric opened his mouth. The proof pillar flashed red. Not because he spoke. Because his sixth thunder chain, still in its case, activated under residual chi. The layered resonance unfolded by itself. Velric's mark. My pattern. And beneath both a third blood trace from Bran, scraped badly and used to disturb the ownership corner. The arena went silent in a much colder way. Elder Saren looked at Bran. Bran looked like he wanted to reincarnate preemptively. Hall Master Orson descended from the elder tier with the slow, heavy steps of a man about to make paperwork hurt. Velric whispered, "This is a misunderstanding." I looked at him. No, I said, this is blood resonance. Panic spreads differently depending on rank. Outer disciples whisper. Inner disciples calculate. Elders become quiet in a way that makes everyone else wish they had chosen farming. Velric tried 3 defenses in the first 10 minutes. First, he claimed collaboration. Min opened the ledger showing he had never signed a shared work declaration. Second, he claimed emergency correction rights. Hall Master Orson pointed out that emergency correction rights did not include planting defective charms in another disciple's drawer with merchant cord. Third, he claimed I had manipulated the proof pillar using experimental sparks. Elder Saren invited him to repeat that accusation under oath before the sect's disciplinary mirror. He stopped talking. Wise eventually. Bran broke first. He confessed to entering the rejection room, stealing draft copies twice before and scraping blood corners from unstable charms under Velric's orders. He insisted he did not know about the framing. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was not. The proof array did not care about his feelings, only his blood. By afternoon, the tournament had been suspended for 1 full hour, which in sect politics is basically an earthquake. Velric's rank was frozen immediately. His tournament results were voided. His Thunder Chain talismans were confiscated. His sponsor token from Elder Marrow was removed in public, which hurt him more than the formal punishment. Cultivators can survive fines, they struggle with embarrassment. Then came the part I had not expected. Hall Master Orson ordered the inspection of Velric's previous submissions. All of them. 6 months of Talisman Hall records. 23 advanced charms. 9 prize entries. 4 commissioned barrier nodes. Every one showed traces of undeclared layered resonance from lower-ranked disciples. 3 had mine. 5 had Min's ink temper, which made her stare at the proof array like it had just insulted her ancestors. The rest came from apprentices too frightened to speak until the pillar spoke for them. Velric had not stolen from me because I was special. He had stolen from me because I was available. That realization should have made me angrier. Instead, it made me cold. Because in the first timeline, his theft had not just ruined my life, it had weakened the sect. His polished charms, built from stolen pieces he did not understand, filled the armory before the beast tide. No wonder they failed. No wonder the northern wards collapsed after 3 minutes. No wonder I died trying to improvise a storm array from scraps while people with better robes screamed for help. Elder Saren offered me immediate reinstatement of reputation, removal of probation, 30 spirit stones in compensation, and a formal commendation for experimental talisman work. Hall Master Orson added, somewhat grudgingly, and access to Shelf 5 under supervision. A generous man, after catastrophe had filled out the form. Velric stood between two disciplinary stewards stripped of his silver clasp, face hollow with fury. When the first wave of punishment was announced, he finally looked at me not like a bug, not like a joke, but like a locked door he had kicked only to discover it opened into a cliff. "Kael," he said, voice low, "do not do this." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because men like Velric always think consequences are something someone does to them, not something they assembled with both hands. "I'm not doing anything," I said, "the rules are." His eyes flashed, "I can compensate you." "You cannot afford it." 50 spirit stones. My sister's medicine cost 2 spirit stones a month when I was expelled in another life, I almost said. Instead I said no. 100. No. A public apology. That is not compensation, that is hygiene. His face twisted. Min made a small choking sound behind me that might have been a laugh. Velric stepped closer, but the stewards held him. "You think they respect you, they are using you because I fell, you are still a scrap paper cultivator." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I let 3 sparks rise from my sleeve. Just 3. They orbited my fingers like patient stars. Velric went silent. "No," I said, "I am the person who knows what scrap paper becomes." The disciplinary council stripped him of Senior Brother rank before sunset. Not expelled. That would have been too simple and politically messy. His family had influence. His elder sponsor wanted distance, not scandal spreading beyond control. So they did something worse for a man like Velric. They made him ordinary. Rank removed. Sponsor token revoked. Tournament eligibility suspended for 5 years. Access to advanced paper denied. All past awards under review. Required repayment to every disciple whose work he used. Mandatory assignment to the ash pits until the debt cleared. Politically crippled. Alive. Humiliated. And surrounded by people who now knew exactly what his brilliance had been made of. Bran lost hall privileges for 1 year and was reassigned to inventory under oath. Harsh enough to sting, lenient enough to encourage confession. Sect justice is not always fair, but it is excellent at protecting its own furniture. Then the elders turned to me. That was when the offers began. Elder Saren wanted me to demonstrate the storm mantle for her allied sect delegation. Hall Master Orson wanted my correction method documented under Talisman Hall ownership. Elder Marrow, who had sponsored Velric, suddenly believed my experimental discipline showed rare practical promise. A merchant clan representative offered 200 spirit stones for exclusive rights to rejected spark charm recovery. 2 hours earlier I was scrap paper. Now everyone wanted to buy the recycling bin. I listened politely. Then I said no exclusive rights. The elders stared. I bowed, with respect. The beast tide comes through the northern pass in 3 days. That changed the air. Not because they believed me immediately. Because confidence has weight when it follows proof. Hall Master Orson frowned. Explain. In the first timeline, warnings had sounded like desperation. This time I had 300 sparks, a proof pillar still glowing behind me, and Velric in custody. So I told them, not everything, not regression. Not death, not 12 years of sleeping beside roads and learning future techniques from battlefields because classrooms were for people who had not been expelled. I told them the Northern Pass beast migration signs were wrong. I told them ashcats had been agitated 3 days early. I told them the wind over Stormbell Cliff smelled metallic before large thunder beast movement. I told them Outer Valley wards were stocked with polished lightning charms that overloaded under multi-beast pressure. Most importantly, I told them rejected spark fields could redirect herd movement without killing the beasts or overloading the wards. Elder Saren listened. Hallmaster Orson listened harder. Velric laughed once from between the stewards. Now he predicts disasters too. I looked at him. Senior Brother Velric, I said, and yes, I use the title because I am petty in small controlled doses. Your charms failed in testing today after 3 breaths. His laughter died. I turned back to the elders. Give me 48 hours, shelf access through 7, Min Lessa as official recorder, 6 apprentices who can follow instructions, and authority to strip unstable rejected charms from disposal before they are burned. Hallmaster Orson's eyebrows climbed. You ask boldly for someone who was on probation this morning. This morning, the sect almost threw away the only defense that will work.
Silence.
Elder Cern smiled slightly. And what title do you require for this temporary authority?
I had not thought about that.
Min spoke before I could.
Storm Talisman Combat Master.
Every elder looked at her.
She lowered her eyes but did not take it back. My chest tightened.
Hallmaster Orson snorted, that is not a hall title.
Elder Cern said, it is now.
And that was how, by sunset of the 7th day, I stopped being a probationary scrap paper cultivator and became the Stormward Sect's first Storm Talisman Combat Master. Velric had wanted the tournament to erase my name.
Instead, it gave my name a job.
The next 48 hours were less glamorous than the title suggested. A Storm Talisman Combat Master, as it turned out, still had to sort paper.
A lot of paper.
Min took command of the records with terrifying calm. She assigned 6 apprentices into pairs, marked each rejected charm by defect type and temper category, and threatened to pour cold ink down the sleeves of anyone who mixed Shelf 4 with Shelf 6.
No one tested her. Smart apprentices.
I worked until my hands shook. We pulled 1,083 rejected lightning charms from disposal trays. Of those, 412 were usable. 219 were too unstable. 3 screamed so badly through the burned fragment that I ordered them soaked, sealed, and buried under a grounding stone. 1 turned out to be a perfectly good warming charm mislabeled by a disciple who could not read his own handwriting. Sect operations are held together by miracles and clerks. I train the apprentices in 3 patterns only.
Spark fence. Grounding spiral. Herd turning crescent.
Nothing fancy, nothing heroic. No one needed to become a master in 2 days. They needed to not die and not make my future self ashamed. Hallmaster Orson watched for 1 hour, grunted twice, and then personally unlocked Shelf 7. Elder Cern sent 2 formation disciples to reinforce the northern pass anchors. The beast ward captains were skeptical until I demonstrated a spark fence with 80 charms and redirected a charging stone boar into a pond without touching it. The boar was offended. The captains were convinced. On the 3rd night after the tournament, the Northern Watch bell rang 6 times.
Beast tide.
Just like before. Only this time the outer valley was ready. We stood along the northern pass beneath rain-heavy clouds. The sect walls rose behind us, black stone slick with mist. Outer disciples clutched spears, inner disciples pretended not to be afraid. Elders stood on the ridge, robes snapping in the wind. I stood at the front with Min beside me under a waxed paper hood, holding 3 record boards because apparently even apocalypses require documentation. You do not have to stand here, I told her. You cannot count past 200 when stressed.
That is slander.
It is recorded. The ground trembled. Shapes moved in the pass. Horned ashcats first, then thunderbacked wolves, then ridge boars with stone plates along their shoulders. Behind them, larger shadows, thunder beasts drawn by seasonal charge, hunger, and the sect's very stupid decision in the first timeline to overstock polished lightning charms that screamed bait into the storm. This time our charms did not scream. They whispered sideways. I raised my hand. Along the pass, 412 rejected spark charms woke in staggered lines.
Not barriers. Suggestions.
The first wave hit the spark fence and veered east into the dry ravine, exactly where the beast ward captains had laid scent lures. The second wave tried to push through and met grounding spirals that bled their charge into buried copper rods. The third wave scattered when crescents flashed near their flanks. Disciples cheered too early. They always do. The largest thunder beast emerged near midnight, taller than a gatehouse, its antlers branching with blue fire. In the first timeline, that beast shattered the northern ward and killed Elder Taven before anyone adapted. This time, Elder Taven stood 50 paces behind me, very much alive and shouting useful instructions for once. The great beast charged. The spark fences bent. 2 apprentices panicked and overfed their line. I felt the pattern buckle through the burned fragment.
Temper surged.
Fear in the left fence. Anger in the right grounding spiral. A brittle discharge hook about to snap. I stepped forward and opened my storm field. 300 personal sparks rose around me. The pass lit blue-white. Rain turned silver. The great thunder beast lowered its antlers, and every instinct in my younger body told me to run. I had died under that sky once. I had heard these roars become screams. Not again. I moved. The storm field expanded from my mantle into the pass array, 300 sparks connected to 412 field charms in a living chain. My meridians burned, my breath broke, the burned fragments seared against my chest. But the lightning answered. Not obedience. Recognition. The great beast struck the field. The world flashed white. I did not stop it, I was not strong enough for that. I turned it. 1 degree. Then 3. Then 7. The beast's charge curved away from the wall and into the ravine where Elder Cern's formation disciples triggered a grounding net. The impact shook mud from the cliffs. Blue fire climbed the copper rods and vanished into the storm clouds. The beast lived. The wall held. The outer sect did not die. When dawn came, the northern pass was scarred, smoking, and full of exhausted disciples staring at rejected talismans like they had discovered a new scripture in the trash. I sat on a wet stone, unable to feel my legs. Min crouched beside me and pushed a cup into my hands. Tea. Terrible tea. Best thing I had ever tasted. You counted wrong, she said. I blinked. What? You said 412 field charms, we recovered 409, 3 burned completely. I was slightly busy redirecting a thunder beast. I noted that. I laughed until my ribs hurt. By noon the entire sect knew. Not only had Velric been exposed, not only had scrap charms worked in the tournament, but the Storm Talisman field had saved the Outer Valley. That did what no hearing could. It changed the story. Velric was no longer the prodigy who made one mistake. He was the thief who had nearly robbed the sect of the method that saved it. His political allies vanished so fast they left Breeze behind. Elder Marrow issued a statement about being deeply deceived, which was elder language for please do not investigate me too. The merchant clan withdrew its interest in Velric's Thunder Chain line and requested a meeting with Min instead, because her records had become the most valuable documents in the Talisman Hall. Hall Master Orson formally established the Storm Talisman Annex in the old storage wing. It had a leaking roof, 4 desks, 1 cracked furnace, and a signboard with no paint. To me it looked like a palace. Velric was assigned to the ash pits the same morning. When I passed him there, he wore plain gray robes and carried a disposal rake. His hair was unbound. His hands, once so carefully clean, were streaked with soot. He looked at me with hatred. But also something worse. Understanding. He finally knew I was stronger than him. Not louder, not richer, not better sponsored. Stronger. Because he could only use perfect things. I had learned how to command what survived breaking. He gripped the rake. This is not over. I stopped. For 1 second the old fear rose, the first timeline fear, the helpless, hungry, expelled fear. Then 3 sparks curled lazily from my sleeve. Velric stepped back before he could stop himself. I smiled. Yes, I said, it is. And I walked away. The sect tried to reward me in the traditional way, which meant giving me things wrapped in politics and expecting gratitude. Hall Master Orson offered me a formal inner disciple promotion. Elder Cern offered to sponsor my Storm Talisman research under her name. Elder Marrow offered a reconciliation grant, which was a fascinating phrase for hush money wearing perfume. The merchant clan offered 500 spirit stones for first purchase rights to any civilian Stormward designs. Velric's family sent a sealed letter requesting a private settlement. I burned that one without opening it. Min watched the ashes curl in the brazier. That may have contained money. Then it should have behaved better. You are impossible. Documented. Repeatedly. I accepted some rewards. I was not stupid. 30 spirit stones went immediately to Nara's medicine fund. Another 20 paid old debts I technically had not accumulated in this timeline yet, but I remembered the creditors and disliked loose ends. 10 bought better paper for the annex. 5 bought Min a new inkstone made from Black River jade. She stared at it for a full minute. Then said, "This is unnecessary."
Yes. It is too expensive. Yes.
"I will use it." I assumed. She looked away, but not before I saw her smile. I refused exclusive ownership by any elder. That caused tension. A lot of tension. Cultivation sects enjoy innovation, but only after someone important has placed a flag on it. I made a different proposal. The Storm Talisman Annex would remain under the Talisman Hall, but all disciples who contributed patterns would have blood resonance credit recorded. No stolen drafts, no unnamed corrections, no generous guidance that somehow transferred ownership upward. Every Storm design would include layered contribution ledgers. Min would oversee records. The elders did not love that. The outer disciples did. The apprentices loved it so much they pretended not to, which is how young cultivators express revolutionary enthusiasm without getting assigned extra chores. Hallmaster Orson argued for 3 hours. I argued for 4. Elder Cern finally laughed and said, "Let him have his ledgers. If the boy can redirect a thunder beast, he can survive paperwork." That was how Min Lessa became official resonance registrar of the Storm Talisman Annex. She received a blue sash, a desk with 3 drawers, and an authority seal that made 2 former tormentors bow so deeply I thought their spines might discover humility. Beautiful day. As for Velric, his collapse continued with institutional elegance. The review board invalidated 9 of his awards. His 5-year suspension became permanent from advanced talisman competition unless he passed a public ethics trial. His family withdrew his monthly stipend not because they were moral, but because investing in scandal has poor returns. His followers dispersed. Some apologized to me. Most apologized badly. One inner disciple who had called me scrap paper brought a tray of spirit fruit and said, "I hope there are no hard feelings." I looked at the fruit. Then at him. "There are documented feelings." He left the tray and fled. I did not become cruel. That mattered to me. The first timeline had given me plenty of reasons to become bitter enough to poison the whole well. But the beast tide taught me something revenge alone never could. If your only goal is to make one man fall, you might miss the wall collapsing behind him. So I built. I trained 12 apprentices in the first month, not prodigies, not polished names. The ones with ugly line work, weak chi control, shaky hands, strange questions, and rejection shelf experience. Especially the ones who had been told they wasted materials. Our first rule was simple: a failed charm is not trash until someone understands why it failed. Our second rule: every contribution gets recorded. Our third rule, written by Min and posted without permission, was: no one touches another disciple's draft without consent unless they want to explain themselves to the proof pillar. Hallmaster Orson pretended not to see the sign. Elder Cern visited twice a week. The annex roof still leaked, but now apprentices fought for seats. By the 3rd month, we had created 6 stable storm field patterns. By the 6th, the outer patrols used spark fences as standard beast deterrents. By the 9th, 3 allied sects sent observers. By the end of the year, people stopped saying rejected spark charms. They called them storm seeds. Funny how language changes when power starts answering to the people at the bottom. Nara visited the sect that winter. She was 16, thin, sharp-eyed, and unimpressed by almost everything except the food hall's sweet rice cakes. I showed her the annex, the storm mantle, the proof pillar, and the northern wall we had saved. She listened quietly. Then she said, "So you finally learned to make your bad handwriting useful. Family keeps you humble." Min laughed so hard she had to sit down. I decided not to marry either of them into politics, which was very mature of me. The burned fragment remained with me. It never became a grand system, it never gave quests, it never told me where to find ancient treasures or how to ascend in 9 easy steps. It stayed narrow. Temper. That was all. When a rune strained, I felt it. When a spark feared collapse, I sensed it. When a pattern became too angry to hold safely, I knew to stop.
The rest was work. A lot of work.
The best powers are like that, I think, not shortcuts, better questions. One evening, almost a year after the tournament, I stood alone in the arena where Velric had fallen and activated 300 sparks again.
This time they moved smoothly. No panic. No tearing pain.
No desperate younger body barely surviving future knowledge. The living storm field opened around me like a cloak of blue stars. It rose, curved, split, and returned at the movement of my hand. Below the spectator seats, new disciples watched in silence. Some had probably heard the story exaggerated already, that I defeated Velric with one charm, that I predicted a beast tide through divine vision, that lightning spirits loved me because of my tragic cheekbones. People ruin facts when they admire them.
The truth was simpler.
I woke up on the worst morning of my life with a burned scrap of death in my sleeve, 7 days before a tournament, 10 days before a disaster, and one chance not to be the frightened man I had been. I did not win because fate liked me. I won because Velric trusted status more than rules, perfection more than evidence, and theft more than understanding. I won because Min saved 47 drafts nobody else thought mattered. I won because failed things remember who listened. Velric eventually left the sect. Not dramatically, no duel, no final speech. He failed his ethics trial, lost his remaining sponsor, and accepted reassignment to a minor branch post so far south that thunder was considered exotic weather. Politically, he was finished, in cultivation terms, alive but irrelevant. A fitting punishment for a man who wanted applause more than mastery. As for me, I remained in the annex. First Storm Talisman Combat Master of the Stormward Sect. Still average in traditional cultivation. Still bad at elegant linework. Still banned from Shelf 9 unless supervised by 2 elders, which is unfair because the incident was only partly my fault. But when I walked through the Talisman Hall, the apprentices no longer hid their failed charms. They brought them to me.
Eager ones. Sullen ones. Brittle ones. Angry ones.
The storms trying not to die. And I taught them to listen. Because in my first life they called me scrap paper and threw me away before the storm arrived. In this life I became the storm they should have studied before lighting the match.